Good morning, everybody. Chester ARP Church Devotional Podcast. Mitch brings us in. All the way my Savior leads me. We'll start in just a second. Welcome.
Each winding path I tread gives me grace for every trial, feeds me with the living bread.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. 1 Samuel chapter 1 is where we start, verse 9, continuing in our reading of the historical books from Judges to Ruth, now to 1 Samuel. After that's Elkanah, Peninnah, and his wife Hannah, so those three people and their family. Elkanah had two wives, Peninnah and Hannah. After they had eaten and drunk in Shiloh, Hannah rose. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant, and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was speaking in her heart, and only her lips moved, and her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli took her to be a drunken woman. And Eli said to her, How long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you. But Hannah answered, No, my lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation. Then Eli answered, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him. And she said, Let your servant find favor in your eyes. Then the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. They rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord, and they went back to their house at Ramah. And Elkanah knew his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. And in due time Hannah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Samuel, for she said, I have asked for him from the Lord. Now, this is the kind of end of the great story we started yesterday with reference to Hannah's inability to conceive and the burden that she felt as a result of not being able to conceive a child. She was in a relationship with her husband Elkanah. He had another wife, Peninnah, the two rivals. One wife was fertile and one wife was able to produce. The other wife was not. And so as Peninnah produced an heir, Hannah did not. There was great bitterness of soul and heart. And what Hannah wanted to do was to produce a child. She wanted to be a mom. That was, in those days, your identity was found in whether or not you could produce an heir and whether or not you could be a mother. And so they go to Shiloh, they go to worship as religious people. We said yesterday, or last time you listened, now Eli the priest was sitting beside the doorpost of the temple. Hannah arises, goes in to pray, and when she goes in to pray, she pours herself out before the Lord. She is in such agony and anxiety and frustration that she prays to God with a closed voice but an open mouth. And what I mean by that is that in her heart she's praying, but she's mouthing the words as she is praying to the Lord. And Eli doesn't understand what's going on. Eli thinks that she's drunk. Eli thinks she needs to lay off the wine. She's had too much wine because she's had a meal with her family. And she says, but I'm not drunk. I'm praying to the Lord. I'm pouring out my soul before the Lord because I'm so full of vexation. You see, and anxiety. You may have been in that situation where there's such burden and there's such pain and there's such sorrow and there's such anxiety and there's such confusion that you're just pouring out your soul before the Lord. And in that moment, your whole body's into your prayer. And this is prayer that's not just intellectual. This is a prayer that's the entire being. And they're praying to God, and she's praying to God, and she's asking God to give her the desires of her heart. And she prays. Her prayer is beautiful. She vows a vow to him, but she's distressed. She prays to the Lord. She weeps bitterly. She's crying. She's mouthing these words, but not saying them. And then she says, if you remember your servant, Lord, I'll dedicate him to you. I just want a child so badly. And the Lord remembers her prayers when they return home. We talked about this yesterday, but barrenness is often an indicator of hardship and difficulty in the Old Testament. And God does incredible things through children born of barren women. And I think that one of the reason that God does that is that he wants us to see that this is all about him. He's the one who does the work. And we can't control our own destiny, no matter how much we think we can. It is only in his time, only in the perfect moment, does he give us the desires of our hearts. Does he meet the needs of his people? And so he didn't want it to be any mistake that this child came from her, just like no mistake for Abraham, no mistake for Joseph, no mistake for Samuel here. These are miraculous, in a sense, miraculous moments, wondrous moments where God works, and not in the miracle of healing maybe the lame man, but they bring he causes her to conceive, and she has a child, and brings fulfillment to her, and that's to fulfill his plan in his timing. She's a woman of faith, but she trusts the Lord even when he doesn't give those things. And so as she has lived her life in trust and pouring her heart out before God, that's why she's praying in the way she's praying, then he responds to her and meets those needs and gives that desire. He'll do the same for us. We trust him not because he gives those things, but we trust him because of who he is, and then we see him work in our lives. So bring your pain, bring your joy, bring your hardship, bring your great desires to the Lord in the name of Christ. Pour them out and watch him work. You guys have a good day. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow as we talk further about the story of the birth of Samuel and Hannah's response to God's gift of grace.
You care.